Mala walked with me down the hallway of the one-story building. It's never going to happen. Even forgetting my political views, which they won't, there's a lot of competition in the college's horticultural department. The landscaping specialists have an edge. My specialty, invasive species, doesn't have the snob appeal of aquaponics and xeriscaping. I'll take your word for it, I said through a laugh, but you're speaking a different language. Aquaponics is a fancy term for a kind of agriculture that grows fish and plants in the same pond, and xeriscaping is simply landscaping with drought-resistant plants, she said, pulling a pair of sunglasses from her handbag and putting them on. The climate on Maui is variable, depending upon where you are on the island. It's a challenge for landscapers to match plants to the conditions, which gives them a chance to show off. But such variety must be rewarding for botanists, too. We pushed through the doors to the outside, where I also donned sunglasses. There's certainly a lot to keep us busy, she replied. Do you have time for a cup of coffee? They're featuring Kona at the cafe today. I'd love it. I had arrived in Hawaii the day before, a guest of the Maui Police Department, to teach a class on community involvement in criminal investigations. My co-teacher was a retired Maui detective and local legend. Since it is the rare government that will pay for a mystery writer's opinion, my expenses had been defrayed by a foundation dedicated to bringing in speakers to broaden the vision of police recruits and encourage the application of creative thinking to solving crime. At least, that's what the invitation letter had stated as its goal. I was hesitant at first, not certain what I could contribute to the education of future police officers, since the field had changed so drastically with the integration of technology into forensics. Besides, it had been a good many years since I'd taught criminology in Manhattan. But Seth Hazlitt, my dear friend and Cabot Cove's favorite physician, had convinced me to accept. Anyone wants to give me a free trip to Hawaii, I'd be a fool not to take it, he'd said with the lack of subtlety for which he's renowned. Since I was between books, and with the added incentive of Seth's insistence that I look up his medical school buddy, I had accepted the challenge to conduct a class on community involvement in police investigations. Unfortunately, Barrett Kapule, Mala's uncle and Seth's old friend, had died the month before my arrival, and Seth had asked me to deliver a condolence letter he'd written to the family. I hadn't done it yet, wanting to wait for the appropriate time. Mala and I entered the bustling campus cafe and found an unoccupied table. She insisted on getting the coffee, and I gratefully accepted. The 10.5-hour trip to Honolulu from New York's John F. Kennedy Airport was catching up to me, not counting the travel time it had taken me to get to New York from my home in Cabot Cove, Maine on one end of the trip, and the connecting flight to Maui from the Hawaiian capital on the other. Although I'd slept well the night I arrived, my body wasn't certain what time zone it was in, nor was my brain. Is this your first trip to Hawaii? Mala asked when she'd returned to our table carrying a tray with 2 mugs. Oh, that smells wonderful, I said, taking one of them. I've been to Hawaii a couple of times, but not in recent years. The last time I was returning to the States from a book tour in Japan and stopped off in Honolulu for a vacation. This time it's a working trip, but I'm looking forward to exploring the island between classes. May I count on you for suggestions of special places to see? Mala laughed. Try to stop me. There are so many beautiful and interesting things to see here. Do you have a car? I smiled at her over the rim of my mug. I'm afraid I don't drive. Really? I've never gotten around to it, which never fails to amuse my friends back home. I do have a pilot's license, though.